Back at the palace, Ugoma was still foaming. Who does he think he is? She muttered under her breath. A milk and wine sapper daring to speak to me like that. Ifeoma stayed quiet, unsure of how to comfort her friend. She knew Ugoma's heart was troubled, but she also knew that her friend needed to realize the impact of her actions on her own. Once upon a time, in the cozy village of Ebenabo, there lived a princess named Ugomma. She was the apple of her parents' eyes, the king and queen of Ebenabo kingdom. Ugomma was as beautiful as the sunrise, with long flowing hair like golden threads and eyes that sparkled like stars in the night sky. Everyone in the village admired her, for she was indeed a sight to behold. But as Princess Ugomma grew older, something changed within her. She became rude and arrogant, thinking herself better than all others. She would turn her nose up at those she thought were beneath her, treating them with disrespect and unkindness. Even the elders of the village were not spared from her sharp tongue. Her parents, wise and kind-hearted rulers, watched with heavy hearts as their daughter's behavior worsened. They knew they had to do something to guide her back to the path of kindness and humility. One bright morning, the king and queen called Princess Ugomma to the royal chambers. They sat her down with gentle expression, ready to teach her an important lesson. Ugomma, my dear, the queen began, her voice soft but serious. We have noticed a change in your behavior lately. The princess shrugged, looking indifferent. What do you mean, mother? I am just being myself. The king sighed deeply, his eyes filled with concern. But being yourself should not mean treating others poorly. As a princess, you have a duty to lead by example and show kindness to all. Ugoma rolled her eyes, a gesture of defiance. Why should I care about the common people? They are beneath me. Her parents exchanged a knowing glance before the queen spoke again. You may be a princess by birth, but true royalty is shown by one's character. It is not enough to simply wear the crown. You must also earn the respect and admiration of your people. The princess coughed, crossing her arms over her chest. And how do you expect me to do that? The king leaned forward, his gaze intense, by treating others with respect and kindness, by showing empathy and understanding, by being the kind of leader that Ebenabo deserves. For a moment, Princess Ugoma remained silent, her thoughts swirling like a stormy sea. Finally, she lowered her head, a hint of humility in her voice. I understand, father. I will try to do better. Her parents smiled, relief washing over them like a gentle breeze. That is all we ask, my dear, said the queen, her voice filled with warmth. Now go, and let your actions speak louder than words. With a newfound determination, Princess Ugoma left the royal chambers, her heart heavy with the weight of her parents' words. She knew that changing her ways would not be easy, but she was willing to try, for the sake of her kingdom and her own redemption. As Ugoma walked through the palace gardens, she thought about her parents' advice. The vibrant flowers and the singing birds seemed to whisper reminders of kindness and grace. She remembered the smiles of the villagers and how they used to greet her with joy. But now, there were only weary glances and hushed whispers. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Princess Ugoma's behavior did not improve. Despite her parents' wise counsel, she continued to treat others with disdain and arrogance. One sunny afternoon, as Princess Ugomma lounged in the palace garden, her two closest friends, Nneka and Efoma, came to visit her. Nneka was a bold and honest friend, never afraid to speak to her or speak her mind, while Efoma was a loyal companion who always seemed to agree with whatever the princess said. Hello, my friends. exclaimed Princess Ugomma, a bright smile lighting up her face as she saw Nneka and Ifeoma approaching. "Hello, Princess," greeted Nneka, her tone serious. "We need to talk." Princess Ugomma raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "Talk about what?" Nneka hesitated for a moment before speaking, her gaze steady. "About your behavior, Ugomma. It's not right, and it's hurting people." Princess Ugomma's smile faded, replaced by a sadness. "What do you mean? I am a princess and I can do as I please." Ifeoma nodded in agreement, her voice gentle. "Yes, princess, you are just being yourself." But Nneka shook her head, her expression grave. "No, Ugomma, you are being cruel and selfish. You need to change." Princess Ugomma's eyes flashed with anger, her fist clenching at her sides. "How dare you speak to me like that? If you don't like it, then maybe we shouldn't be friends anymore." Nneka sighed, sadness etched on her face. "I speak the truth because I care about you, Ugomma. But if you choose to continue down this path, then perhaps it best we part ways." The princess's heart sank at Nneka's words, but her pride refused to let her admit defeat. "Fine, leave. I don't need you. Leave." With that, Nneka turned and walked away, leaving Princess Ugomma alone with her thoughts. Ifeoma watched silently, torn between loyalty to her friend and the nagging feeling that perhaps Nneka was right. After Nneka had gone, Princess Ugomma turned to Ifeoma, her eyes pleading. "You don't agree with her, do you, Ifeoma?" Ifeoma forced a smile, her voice reassuring. "Of course not, princess. Nneka is just jealous of our friendship. You are perfect just the way you are." Relief flooded over Princess Ugoma's heart and she embraced Ifeoma tightly. "Thank you, Ifeoma. You are the only true friend I have." But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted in Princess Ugoma's mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps Nneka was right and that she needed to change her ways. But for now, she pushed those thoughts aside, content to bask in the comfort of Ifeoma's unwavering support. On a bright and sunny day in the village of Ebenabo, Princess Ugomma strode through the bustling streets with her faithful friend Ifeoma by her side and her maids trailing behind her. As they walked, a handsome young man named Chinedu, a well-known palm wine tapper in the village, crossed paths with Princess Ugomma. His heart skipped a beat at the sight of her, for he had long admired the princess from afar and had been waiting for the perfect opportunity to speak to her. "Good day, princess," greeted Chinedu, his voice filled with nervousness and admiration. Princess Ugomma stopped in her tracks, her expression one of annoyance. "What do you want?" she snapped, her tone sharp. Chinedu's cheek flushed with embarrassment, but he persisted, determined to express his feelings. I I just wanted to say hello, princess. I admire you greatly." And before he could finish his sentence, Princess Ugoma erupted in anger, her words dripping with scorn. "Admire me? Ha! What could someone like you possibly admire about me? You are nothing but a lowly palm wine tapper. How dare you even think that you could be worthy of me?" With a swift motion, Princess Ugoma raised her hand and delivered a stinging slap to Chinedu's cheek, caused him to stagger backward in shock. The onlookers gasped in horror at the princess's cruel words and actions, but she paid them no mind as she stormed away, her maids hurrying to keep pace with her. Chinedu stood frozen in place, the sting of the princess's words cutting deeper than any physical pain. He felt a mix of hurt, anger, and humiliation wash over him, but beneath it all, there remained a flicker of determination. As Princess Ugomma disappeared from view, Ifeoma approached Chinedu, her expression sympathetic. "I'm sorry about Princess Ugomma's behavior, Chinedu. She can be difficult." Chinedu forced a fake smile, though his heart still ached. "It's alright, Ifeoma. Thank you for your kindness." With a heavy heart, Chinedu continued on his way, his thoughts consumed by the encounter with the princess. Despite the hurtful words and the humiliation, he couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps there was more to Princess Ugomma than met the eye. Deep down, he sensed that her cruelty was merely a mask for deeper insecurities and pain. As Chinedu walked away, he thought about how unfairly he had been treated. He decided that he would not let this experience crush his spirit. He would continue to work hard and be kind to others, hoping that one day Princess Ugoma might see the error of her ways. Back at the palace, Ugoma was still fuming. Who does he think he is? She muttered under her breath. A maple wine sapper daring to speak to me like that. Ifeoma stayed quiet, unsure of how to comfort her friend. She knew Ugoma's heart was troubled, but she also knew that her friend needed to realize the impact of her actions on her own. That evening, Ugoma sat alone in her room, replaying the day's events in her mind. She remembered the hot look on Chinedu's face and the gasp of the villagers. For the first time, she felt a pang of guilt. Could it be that she's gone too far? She pushed the thought aside, but it still lingered, making her feel uneasy. Weeks passed since Princess Ugoma's encounter with Chinedu, the palm wine tapper. Despite the hurt and humiliation he had experienced, Chinedu couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to confront the princess once more. With his friend Emeka by his side, he decided to pay a visit to the palace, determined to speak his mind and perhaps find closure. As they approached the grand gates of the palace, Chinedu's heart pounded with nervous anticipation. Emeka, ever the voice of reason, warned him to brace himself for whatever might happen. "Chinedu, are you sure about this?" asked Emeka, his brow furrowed with concern. "The princess has already shown her true colors. Why put yourself through this again?" But Chinedu remained resolute, his eyes filled with determination. "I need to do this, Emeka. I need to confront her and let her know how her words and actions have affected me." With a nod of understanding, Emeka followed Chinedu through the palace gates, their footsteps echoing against the stone walls as they made their way to the royal chambers. Upon reaching the palace courtyard, Chinedu approached one of the guards and respectfully requested an audience with Princess Ugomma. The guard, recognizing Chinedu from their previous encounter, hesitated for a moment before reluctantly agreeing to fetch the princess. Moments later, Princess Ugomma emerged from the palace, her expression one of annoyance as she laid eyes on Chinedu and Emeka standing before her. "What is the meaning of this?" demanding the princess, her voice sharp with irritation. "Why have you summoned me, peasant?" Chinedu took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "Princess Ugomma, I have come to speak with you about—" Before he could finish his sentence, Princess Ugomma erupted in anger, her words cutting like a knife. "How dare you address me in such a manner? You are nothing but a low life, a palm wine tapper unworthy of my time or attention." With a swift emotion, Princess Ugomma lashed out at the guard who had called her out, delivering a stinging slap to his cheek. The guard recoiled in shock, his eyes wide with disbelief at the princess's unprovoked attack. Turning her attention back to Chinedu and Emeka, Princess Ugomma's eyes flashed with disdain. "And as for you two, how dare you come here and disturb my peace? You are nothing but peasants, unworthy of even standing in my presence." Chinedu's heart sank at the princess's cruel words, the pain of her rejection cutting deeper than any physical blow. But before he could respond, Emeka stepped forward, his voice firm with resolve. "Enough, princess," Emeka said, his eyes blazing with indignation. "Chinedu may be a palm wine tapper, but he's a man of honor and integrity. He deserves far more respect than you have shown him." Princess Ugomma scoffed, her expression one of disdain. "And who are you to speak to me in such a manner? Eh, you fool!" But before Emeka could respond, a voice echoed through the courtyard, cutting through the tension like a ray of sunlight. "What is going on here?" Chinedu and Emeka turned to see the king and queen standing in the doorway of the palace, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern. Princess Ugomma's eyes widened in panic as she struggled to find words to explain herself. "Father, mother, it is nothing. These fools." But the king held up a hand, his expression stern. "Enough, Ugomma. We saw everything." The king then turned to Princess Ugomma, his voice firm and gentle. "Ugomma, you must apologize to Chinedu, Emeka and the guard. Now!" Princess Ugomma hesitated, her pride battling with the weight of her parents' command. Finally, she lowered her head, her voice trembling with reluctance. I I apologize for my behavior," she said, looking at Chinedu, Emeka and the guard. "I was wrong." The king turned to Chinedu and Emeka, his gaze filled with regret. "I am deeply sorry for my daughter's behavior. Please accept our sincerest apologies." Chinedu's eyes welled up with tears at the king's words, his heart heavy with emotion. "Thank you, your majesty." With a nod of gratitude, Chinedu and Emeka turned to leave the palace, their heads held high despite the pain and humiliation they had endured. As they walked away, Chinedu couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over him, knowing that he had finally stood up for himself and confronted the princess who had caused him so much anguish. As Chinedu and Emeka left the palace grounds, they couldn't help but reflect on the day's events. Chinedu felt a mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and a glimmer of hope. He hoped that Princess Ugomma would take this experience to heart and begin to change her ways. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Princess Ugomma retreated to her chambers, her mind swirling with confusion and shame. She had never been so humiliated in her life. The words of her father, the king, and the looks of disappointment from the villagers haunted her. 2 days after the encounter at the palace, Chinedu and Emeka sat together at a local bar, their conversation filled with thoughts of the recent events. "You know, Chinedu," Emeka began, taking a sip of his drink, "I think it's time you moved on from Princess Ugomma. She's not worth your time or your heart." Chinedu nodded in agreement, a sense of resolve settling over him. "You're right, Emeka. There are plenty of other girls in Ebenabo with kind hearts and beautiful spirits." Emeka grinned, clapping his friend on the back. "That's the spirit, my friend. And hey, what about Efoma? She's a good friend of the princess and a kind soul. Maybe she's the one for you." Chinedu pondered Emeka's suggestion for a moment before nodding thoughtfully. "You know what? I think I'll give it a try. It's worth a shot, right?" Emeka chuckled, raising his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings, Chinedu. May you find happiness and love wherever you go." With a laugh, Chinedu clinked his glass against Emeka's, the sound ringing out like a promise of hope. Days later, Chinedu mustered up the courage to visit Efoma at her parents' house. With a nervous heart and hopeful spirit, he expressed his intention to Efoma, asking for her hand in marriage. Efoma listened attentively, her eyes soft with understanding. After much thought and consideration, she agreed to Chinedu's proposal, but suggested they take some time to get to know each other better before making any final decisions. Chinedu agreed wholeheartedly, feeling a sense of joy and anticipation at the prospect of building a future with Efoma by his side. As they sat together, sharing a meal prepared by Efoma herself, laughter and conversation filled the air. Suddenly, Princess Ugomma entered unnoticed with her maids. Her eyes widened in disbelief and anger as she saw Chinedu sitting beside Efoma. "What is the meaning of this?" she asked, her voice sharp with indignation. Efoma smiled sweetly, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Oh, princess, Chinedu is here to ask for my hand in marriage." The princess burst out laughing, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You two, marry each other. Ha! You both deserve each other." With that, Princess Ugomma turned on her heel and stormed out of the house, leaving Chinedu and Efoma alone once more. After Ugomma left, Ifeoma turned to Chinedu, her eyes filled with concern. Are you sure about this, Chinedu? Being involved with me might cause you more trouble with the princess. Chinedu took her hand gently, his eyes filled with sincerity. I am sure, Ifeoma. I want to be with someone who respects and cares for me. I believe we can be happy together. Over the following months, Chinedu and Ifeoma spent more time together, getting to know each other better. They visited the market, helped each other with daily tasks, and shared stories and dreams. The villagers noticed the growing bond between them and supported their relationship. Few weeks later, they both got married. Princess Ugomma spent a serene afternoon in the palace garden, surrounded by her loyal maids who tended to her every need. The gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, and the sweet fragrance of the flowers filled the air. But the tranquility was soon shattered by the arrival of a palace guard, his expression solemn as he approached the princess. Princess Ugomma, your presence is urgently required at the palace, the guard announced, his voice tinged with urgency. Curious, Princess Ugomma followed the guard back to the palace, wondering what could be so important that her parents needed to see her. Upon her arrival, Princess Ugomma was met by her parents, the king and queen of Ebenabo, who had a surprise awaiting her. Standing beside them was a handsome young man named Obina, the son of the prime minister from a neighboring village. Obina was well dressed, with an air of confidence befitting his status as a successful businessman who resided in the city. Princess Ugomma, began the king, his voice warm and welcoming. Allow me to introduce you to Obina. He has come to ask for your hand in marriage. Princess Ugomma's eyes widened in surprise at the unexpected proposal. She looked Obina up and down with a critical eye, a disdainful smile forming on her lips. Marry me? She scoffed, unable to contain her amusement. He is not fit to be my husband. Obina's parents exchanged uncomfortable glances, their faces flushed with embarrassment at the princess's disrespectful words. Obina himself stood tall, though inwardly he felt a pang of hurt at Princess Ugomma's rejection. The king's expression darkened with displeasure at his daughter's behavior. Ugomma, this is unacceptable. Obina is a fine young man, and his proposal deserves your respect and consideration. But Princess Ugomma shook her head defiantly, her pride refusing to yield. No, father, I will not lower myself to marry someone beneath my standard. Obina should leave this palace at once and never return to ask for my hand in marriage again. With that, Princess Ugomma turned on her heel and walked away, leaving her parents and the guests stunned by her brazen refusal. Obina's parents were mortified and heartbroken by the princess's harsh rejection, while the king struggled to find the right words to apologize for his daughter's behavior. I am deeply sorry for Princess Ugomma's disrespect. The king apologized to Obina and his parents, his voice heavy with regret. Please forgive her. Obina and his parents rose from their seats, their pride wounded but their dignity intact. With a nod of acknowledgement, they bid farewell to the king and queen, their hearts heavy with disappointment as they departed from the palace. As Obina and his parents left, the queen turned to king, her eyes filled with concern. What are we going to do about Ugomma? Her pride and arrogance are driving away everyone. The king sighed deeply, his brow furrowed with anger. I do not know, my dear, but we must find a way to teach her humility and respect before it is too late. Meanwhile, Princess Ugomma retreated to her chambers, fuming with anger. How dared they to marry me off like that? She muttered to herself. I deserve someone far better than a mere businessman. Days passed, and the story of Princess Ugomma's disgraceful refusal spread throughout the village. The villagers whispered among themselves, shocked and disappointed by their princess's behavior. They had hoped that she would find a good match and bring honor to Ebenabo, but her actions only brought shame. Despite Princess Ugomma's beauty and status, her arrogance and bad behavior continued to repel potential suitors, leaving her parents dismayed and the villagers disheartened. They tried as they might to reason with her. Princess Ugomma remained obstinate, refusing to heed their advice and change her ways. One fateful day, as Princess Ugomma strolled through the village with her maids, she encountered an old woman making her way down the dusty road. The old woman, bent with age and leaning heavily on her walking stick, paid no heed to the princess as she passed by. Infuriated by the old woman's apparent disregard for her status, Princess Ugomma called out to her, her voice sharp with indignation. "Stop right there," she commanded, her tone laced with contempt. "How dare you pass by the beautiful princess of Ebenabo without showing proper respect?" The old woman paused and turned to face the princess, her eyes filled with wisdom and sadness. "Forgive me, your highness. I did not mean to offend." But Princess Ugomma was not appeased. With a sneer, she began to hurl insults at the old woman, her words cutting like knives through the air. "How dare you speak to me in such a manner?" she spat, her voice dripping with disdain. "You are nothing but a lowly peasant, unworthy of even looking upon my face." Turning to her maids, Princess Ugomma issued a command: "Push this woman aside and teach her some respect." But to her surprise, the maids stood frozen in place, their expressions troubled. "We cannot obey such a command, your highness," one of them replied hesitantly. Enraged by their defiance, Princess Ugomma took matters into her own hands, shoving the old woman roughly aside. With a cry of pain, the old woman stumbled and fell to the ground, tears welling up in her eyes. As Princess Ugomma and her maids walked away, the old woman's voice rang out behind them, filled with sorrow and anger. "May the curse of the unjust fall upon you, Princess Ugomma," she cried, her words echoing through the village square. Princess Ugomma scoffed at the old woman's words, dismissing them as the rambling of a madwoman. As days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Princess Ugomma's life continued as before, filled with luxury and privilege, but devoid of kindness and humility. As the sun rose over the village of Ebenabo, the town crier's voice rang out through the streets, calling the villagers to gather for the annual New Yam festival. It was a happy time, a time for celebrating the good harvest they had received. In the palace, the king and queen of Ebenabo got ready for the festival, excited to join their people in the celebration. But they were also worried about their daughter, Princess Ugomma, who had been acting strangely lately. "Where is Princess Ugomma?" the queen asked, her face showing her concern. "She must not miss the New Yam festival. It's a time for everyone to come together and be happy." The maids hurried to Princess Ugomma's room, eager to wake her up and get her ready for the festival. But as they entered the room, they were met with a sight that filled them with fear. Princess Ugomma lay on her bed, her once beautiful face twisted and ugly. Her skin was pale and wrinkled, her features changed beyond recognition. It was as if she had turned into a creature from a nightmare overnight. With a cry of horror, the maids ran from the room, their hearts pounding with fear. They rushed to tell the king and the queen what they had seen, their voices shaking with terror. The king and queen hurried to their daughter's room, their mind filled with shock and disbelief. But as they entered the room and saw her, they were speechless. They couldn't believe what had happened to Princess Ugomma. "My child," the queen whispered, her voice full of sadness, "what has happened to you?" Princess Ugomma lay on her bed, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know," she cried. "Someone has cursed me, but who could have done this?" The king and queen exchanged worried looks, their hearts heavy with sorrow for their daughter. They knew that Princess Ugoma's bad behavior had likely made someone angry, but they never thought it would lead to such a terrible cause. As the villagers gathered in town square to start the festival, the king and queen stayed by their daughter's side, worried about what had happened. On this day of celebration, their hearts were heavy with worry for Princess Ugomma and the kingdom of Ebenabo. News of Princess Ugoma's change spread quickly through the village. The villagers, who had once admired the princess's beauty, now felt sorry for her. They wondered what could be done to break the curse and help their princess. The palace of Ebenabo was filled with sadness and worry. The king and queen did not know what to do about their beloved daughter, Princess Ugomma. No one in the village, not even the wisest men and soothsayers, could find out why she was suffering. The royal family felt helpless and very sad. One morning, as the sun rose over the village, the king called the village chief priest to the palace. He hoped the priest could help them find answers. The chief priest arrived quickly. His face showed concern as he listened to the king's story. "Your Majesty," began the chief priest, "I have talked to the spirits and performed many rituals, but I cannot find the cause of Princess Ugoma's suffering. It is as if she is under a powerful curse, and that is hard to explain." The king's heart sank when he heard the chief priest's words. He worried more and more about his daughter. Princess Ugoma's condition had only gotten worse. It hurt him to see her in such pain. Inside her room, Princess Ugomma lay on her bed. Her once beautiful face was now covered in tears and sorrow. She had become a shadow of her former self, filled with guilt and regret for the pain she had caused others. Day and night, she cried bitterly. The only thing that comforted her was her mother's presence by her side. Despite all that had happened, the queen stayed with her daughter, never leaving her alone. Outside the palace, the villagers whispered among themselves. They felt sorry for Princess Ugomma but also remembered her past arrogance and cruelty. No one dared to approach the palace, fearing the curse that had struck the princess. As days went by, the king's health began to fail. His worry for his daughter was too much for him. Even though he tried to stay strong for the kingdom, his despair made him weak. But even in the darkness that covered the palace, there was a small light of hope. In her deep sadness, Princess Ugomma began to understand how wrong she had been. She felt true remorse in her heart. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her mother, her voice full of emotion. "I'm sorry for everything." The queen hugged her daughter tightly, her own tears mixing with Ugomma's. "We will find a way to break this curse, my dear," she promised. "We will not rest until you are free from this suffering." As days passed and Princess Ugomma's affliction remained a mystery, a glimmer of hope emerged when one of the palace maids approached the queen with a startling revelation. Trembling with fear, the maid recounted the encounter with the old woman and the curse she had laid upon the princess. The queen's heart sank as she listened to the maid's tale, realizing that this could be the key to unlocking the mystery of her daughter's suffering. Summoning Princess Ugomma to her chambers, the queen gently urged her daughter to recount the events of that fateful day. With tears streaming down her face, Princess Ugomma recounted the encounter with the old woman and the curse she had unwittingly incurred. As she spoke, the weight of her guilt and remorse hung heavy in the air, and the queen's heart ached for her daughter's suffering. Determined to right the wrongs of the past, the king ordered the palace guards to search for the old woman and bring her to the palace. For days, the guards scoured the village in search of the elusive woman, their efforts fueled by the hope of finding a solution to Princess Ugomma's affliction. Finally, on the brink of despair, the guards stumbled upon the old woman in a remote corner of the village. With trembling hands, they delivered the king's message, pleading with her to come to the palace and lift the curse she had laid upon the princess. But the old woman remained steadfast, refusing to heed their pleas until the king himself came to seek her out. With a heavy heart, the king, accompanied by the queen and Princess Ugomma, made their way to the old woman's humble abode. As they stood before her, Princess Ugomma fell to her knees, her voice trembling as she begged for forgiveness. The old woman regarded her with a mixture of pity and compassion, her heart softened by the sincerity of the princess's plea. "I forgive you, my child," she said softly, her voice filled with wisdom. "But remember, true beauty lies not in outward appearances, but in the kindness and humility of the heart." With those words, the old woman lifted the curse she had placed upon Princess Ugomma, and in an instant, the princess's beauty was restored. Gasps of amazement echoed through the crowd as they beheld the transformation, and tears of joy streamed down the king and queen's faces. Summoning the villagers, the king declared a feast in honor of his daughter's redemption. Princess Ugomma stood before the gathered crowd, her heart overflowing with gratitude as she apologized to Chinedu, Efora, Emeka, and all those she had wronged in the past. As laughter and music filled the air, the kingdom of Ebenabo rejoiced in the triumph of love, forgiveness, and redemption. And though challenges may lie ahead, the bonds of family and community will forever guide them on the path to a brighter future. Princess Ugoma's heart swelled with happiness as she danced and celebrated with the villagers. She had learned a valuable lesson and was determined to be a kind and humble princess from then on. The old woman watched from a distance, a gentle smile on her face. She knew that Princess Ugomma had truly changed and that her heart was now filled with goodness. As the sun set and the stars began to twinkle in the sky, the people of Ebenabo gathered around a large bonfire. They sang songs, shared stories, and enjoyed the feast prepared in celebration of Princess Ugomma's transformation. The king and queen looked at their daughter with pride and love. They knew that she would be a wise and caring leader for their people. And so, with heart full of hope and joy, the people of Ebenabo celebrated the end of one chapter and the beginning of a new era of peace and harmony. Princess Ugomma had been redeemed, and the kingdom was united in their love and support for her. From that day forward, Princess Ugomma ruled with kindness and humility. She listened to the needs of her people and worked to make the kingdom a better place for everyone. The villagers admired her for her strength and courage in admitting her mistakes and changing for the better. As the years passed, the story of Princess Ugomma's transformation became a legend in Ebenabo. It was told to children as a lesson in the importance of kindness, humility, and the power of forgiveness. And so, the kingdom of Ebenabo thrived, guided by the wisdom and compassion of Princess Ugomma and the love and support of its people. The bonds of family and community grew stronger, and peace and harmony reigned throughout the land. The most important lesson in this story is that pride and arrogance can cause great pain. It is crucial to always treat others with kindness and respect, especially our elders. Our actions can affect ourselves and those around us. By being humble and compassionate, we can overcome problems and find forgiveness. True beauty comes from being good inside and treating others with love and kindness, no matter their status or appearance. By seeking forgiveness, we can fix broken relationships and create a better and more peaceful community. And with that, my dear friends, our story comes to a close. But remember, the magic of storytelling lives on, waiting to whisk us away on new adventures, where the wonders of imagination know no bounds. Goodbye for now. and may your dreams be filled with wonder, joy, and endless possibility. Thank you so much for watching. Please kindly comment, share, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting stories.